Hello and welcome to another vlog episode. I hope that you're doing well. I hope that your week has started well as well. There's always conversations going on at the moment around AI, the future of AI, and the like. And I thought to jump on here and have a little bit of a conversation about what's happening with AI at the moment. We know that last week, Elon Musk, owner of Twitter, revealed that he is starting his own AI generative program or system or platform, which I think is called XAI. And this is in response to what he deems to be the wokeness of platforms like ChatGPT. Now, I've talked about ChatGPT previously on the podcast and gone back a little bit into the history of it to let you know that OpenAI, the company that set up ChatGPT, one of the initial backers of it at that time was Elon Musk. So, he had a very strong interest in the future of AI through OpenAI, but then has pulled away from it because of what he deems to be the overly wokeness of platforms that try to remove hate speech, misogyny, racism, and other forms of online hate speech. And so he's touting his new platform as being more open, more truth-oriented, and less censored. I think this is an ongoing conversation and area of division that we see between the left and the right, the left being the more liberal space and, the right being more traditional. We saw this with the rise of Donald Trump, people feeling like on the right that they were being censored, not being allowed to speak their truth, so to speak, and feeling like, they didn't have spaces. And so, Donald Trump has Truth Social, which is one platform that he's also set up, which is touting itself again on this premise of truth. I find this conversation around censorship and moderation of hate speech very interesting. And that's because some years ago when I ran the platform Her Zimbabwe, I started a women's web-based platform called Her Zimbabwe, which was getting young women into online activism and digital storytelling. And one thing that always gave me a little bit of a moral dilemma was around content moderation on the social media channels. So you tended to find that, especially on Facebook, because women tend to participate in conversations on Facebook more than on Twitter, you would have every now and again, a misogynist or a hateful person come in to disrupt a conversation and say things that were very controversial and very grating. And the dilemma I always had was, should those comments stay on or should they be deleted? Should we delete them? Because here's the thing, there were two sides of this coin, at least the way I saw it. The first side of the coin was, if you delete the message, you act as though the hate doesn't exist. And if you want to give an accurate synopsis of a historical moment, you need to also be able to gauge the hate speech that's manifesting online. At the same time, on the other side of this coin, if you leave that hate speech on a platform or on a thread or wherever it is, basically that space doesn't become safe for the people who are participating. People shy away, people back away, people feel unsafe because there is the possibility that if you continue to engage, more of that will come and it might be directed personally at you. And so that continuum of the conversation between the safe space and the accuracy of the reporting on the hate was always something that gave me a little bit of a dilemma about what to do. And, when to then take something off. Should you take it off immediately, or should you allow people to respond to it? Because it's also part of the agency of people to be able to engage back with something they find problematic. But what I find to be the issue with the ways that, this idea of moderating hate speech sounds at the moment in the AI world, is that it's almost saying that truth is anything that allows hateful commentary, because that is truth. Essentially, this is what people who push anything that says anything that is not filtering out hateful commentary is not truth. That's what they're saying. They're saying that truth is the equivalent of no responsibility and no desire to actually change things. I am the way I am, and so it is. Basically, that's the kind of attitude that is. And that's a very dangerous attitude to have, because these are very powerful people. These aren't people with small audiences and small ambitions. These are people with very big ambitions. And if that packaging of truth becomes something that is palatable, and we know it's palatable to a lot of people already, if it becomes more and more palatable, what are we then saying about countering and mitigating hateful commentary? It's almost like the digital space allows people to project an idea of society that is actually not realistic, because even in a physical realm, we have checks and balances. We move through spaces collectively, and you may be a misogynist, you may be a racist, you may, all these things that people have within themselves. But when we move through societal frameworks and spaces, especially, the spaces that are open and public, we have to conform to certain standards of decency and morality and uphold certain collective values that say, I may absolutely hate you, but then I cannot come up to you and spew that at you. So if that's how society is constructed, why should the online space act in a different way? Why are we saying it's, gloves are off in the online space? We should have spaces that are not conforming to collective values of decency. I think that's the main issue that comes up with, this interest, this hyper interest in making alternative spaces that aren't seen as woke to be truth. Because what is truth? Truth is not an objective value. Truth is happening in different ways to different people. My truth is different to your truth, and the next person's truth, it's informed by what I have experienced and what I believe. And so I think this idea that truth then becomes this thing that allows people to be hateful is a very dangerous terrain to move into, because it in its essence says we don't have a responsibility to share the same social and normative values that we share in the offline world. But it's also saying that we do not have a responsibility to change. If I have hateful ideas or ideologies, that's that. I'm good. Let me find other people with similar values, and let's give ourselves space to continue them. And I think that's a very problematic way to think about society, and to think about discourse, and to think about communality. But yeah, these are the things that are happening all the time in the digital space. And you have been happening for a long time. We know the same thing has been happening in spaces like Facebook, social, Twitter, and other spaces where, people feel like, oh, well, if you ban somebody who's very problematic, that's an infringement on their rights to express themselves. Goes back to the age-old conversation: is freedom of expression entirely free? Or should we have checks and balances? And what should those checks and balances look like? What does collective decency look like? Because our values and morals are very different. Very difficult conversations. This is a very philosophical sort of take, or an ethical take. But, it's always interesting to think about these things and to contextualize them, and then ask, well, what does it look like? Or what does it mean if we are saying that wokeness or respecting people's differences is something that we do not want to uphold, and what communities does that tap into beyond the right in the West. You know, there are also pockets of communities outside of the Western world that would very much jump onto such ideas that we should have hateful spaces where we actually demean and talk down to people and vent our frustrations in these very ways that make us feel that we are not doing something that is morally not right. Anyway, just thought to come on and share that little thought. If you have any ideas or any suggestions or comments or feedback, please do comment in the comment section below this video, or else you can always find the Twitter account, which is Native Podcast, Facebook page, which is the Digitally Native Podcast with Fungai Machirori, and the same name for the LinkedIn page, the Digitally Native Podcast with Fungai Machirori. Alternatively, send an email to info@digitallynnativepodcast.com. I look forward to your thoughts, and I wish you a good day.